Today on the iRacing Downshift, Chris discusses being a musician.
I'm sorry, I'm not a rapper.
Kevin is happy he got beat.
I guess I'm pleased to announce that there was an upset this week.
And I discuss experimental equations.
I didn't know that. I don't know anything about differentials.
All that and more. So strap in. Welcome to the iRacing Downshift. I'm your host, Greg West, here again with the boys, Kevin Bobbitt and Chris Leone. Guys, we got a great show today. We got some iRacing news, some tips and tricks on the Formula Renault 3.5. We're going to talk about this week in iRacing. I've got 3 Pro Series running, a little bit of a real-world recap, and then a look at the week ahead, specifically talking about the Throw and Go Challenge, where there might have been an upset. Kevin?
No comment.
Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Greg. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. We're in the office a little early, but let's get this party started with this week in iRacing news and tips and tricks. We have a cool series announcement, a kind of a mini series, the Skip Barber Mustang series presented by Lime Rock Park. Yes, got it right on the first try. Kevin, this has been a cool series come together focused on a single car and a single track.
Yeah, this series came together kind of at the behest of Lime Rock and Skip Barber. They reached out to us a while ago. We've been trying to do some more programs together. Obviously, we have a great synergy, and we share a customer base, race fans. They're kind of our local home track, if you will. I actually grew up going to that track as a kid. I grew up in Connecticut, watching Paul Newman race and the Bob Sharp Nissans. So fond memories at Lime Rock. But anyway, we're trying to do a lot more things with them. This series has some pretty cool prizes, a racing experience school with the Skip Barber series, some awesome tickets to many of the events at Lime Rock. But we modeled the series after kind of a short track series where it's the same car, the same track over multiple weeks, just like you might see in a Northeast short track series. Really kind of a fun series. The Mustang's always been fun to drive. So I think it kicked off this week and it runs for, I think, 8 more weeks.
Yeah, really cool series. I like how they've done the prize pack. It's not just for the winners, although if you win the overall, you have the great experience. We got some tickets, we got the driving experience, but there are tickets for random participation winners. So for every race that you participate in, you get an entry into a raffle, and we're going to be doing weekly and an overall series raffle winner. So some really cool prizes, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the coolest thing about this is you don't have to be the best road racer in the world.
So you can race this.
I could even race this and have a chance at winning something. Just hanging out in the back of the pack and 3 laps down at the end of the race. Even I could win something. I work for iRacing, so obviously, no, I cannot.
But a really cool series. If you get a chance, it is a limited participation. So we only have 3 days a week that it's going to run to kind of maximize when people are going to be out there. So we're running on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays at noon, 4, 8, and midnight Eastern. So limited time slots, but some cool racing. Yesterday's races were very good, really competitive. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think we've already had, 3 or 4 official races, and it just started, so it's been good.
Awesome. Moving on to something that I'm really excited about, something a little bit new and different for iRacing. We've got Formula Fun starting on July 1st when the week switches over. It is a new series for iRacing, trying something a little bit different. We have the F3, the Dallara Formula 3 car, racing at 9 different club-length, club-style tracks, underused tracks in the service that we have, but just nobody seems to run. But here's the trick. They are incredibly short races. You got 3 minutes of practice, 5 minutes of qualifying, and then a 10-minute sprint, and then you have a chance to do it again a half hour later, Chris.
Yeah, it's a fantastic new idea. It's so fun to see, just quick races like this. You might be waiting for your league race that's not for a couple of hours. You might be waiting for an official race that's not for a couple of hours. But races like Formula Fun give you the opportunity to just get behind the wheel, get back in the seat, be able to get out there and get as many races in as possible. It was a cool idea, Greg. I wonder who came up with it.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you that, but it's here. I think one of my favorite things about it, and this is going to be controversial, and we're going to hear about it in the forums, I'm sure, but it is unofficial, and we did that on purpose. We have this thing where people are scared to race because they're protecting their I rating, they're protecting their safety rating. That being said, we want people racing, but this is also has to be clean. The sporting code is in full effect. I know Nim and Sam are going to be watching this like a hawk. We're going to talk about some stewardship with Nim here in a little bit. But this is not just send it and go wreck everybody, because the same rules apply. The goal is to get people racing often, and bring the fun back into the lower level racing in iRacing. It's open for everybody from your brand new rookie all the way up to Pro $499, whatever. So come on out. You'll see it in the forums. It starts on Monday.
So we expect to see you racing in this?
I love this car. It is a little bit of a handful on cold tires. Heads up for those of you that don't know it. One of the really cool things about this series too is it's mostly free content as far as tracks. In fact, the first 3 weeks are go to Tsukuba, Okayama, and Charlotte doing the Roval, which is a lot of fun. Stay off those turtle curves in this thing. The suspension's so stiff. So you have a lot of free content in there. A couple of paid tracks, but the layouts that are not used a lot. I think my favorite in here, the Texas Road Course, the long version of it. It's in the interior of the Texas Oval, and it's like a little go-kart track. It's simple to learn. It's going to make for some good racing, some great passing opportunities. So just really excited about it. Moving on, this is a cool new segment. I've been talking with Nimcross on a daily basis. We go back and forth on some iRacing incidents, replays getting sent all over the place. And he had the idea to talk about every episode, have just a little tip from Nim, trying to clean up racing a little bit, maybe improving racecraft. And this week, we're going to talk about re-entering the track safely. So you've already screwed up. You're in the grass. You probably came to a stop. Everybody's driving by. Kevin, what do you do at this point in time?
I'd probably ask Vettel what to do.
Oh,
no, I'm kidding.
Too soon.
Too soon. Sorry. No, I mean, obviously, it's your responsibility to come on track and not cause another incident, right? That's bad for you and everybody else that's involved in that. So, in the real world, you're looking for a marshal to wave you on, or you should be anyway. Not always, but here you've got to get pointed in the right direction, and you've got to come on not impeding traffic, because everybody else is still on it, right? They're maxed out. They're coming through a corner. Presumably, that's where you went off. So you've got to be really careful. Use those black boxes. That's the kind of the key to success. Is go to F3 and look and see. You'll see people closing and pick your spot and realize that they're going to be going a whole lot faster than you. So pick your spot smartly.
I think that the key to remember here is you've already messed up. You're going to be back. All you're going to do is make it worse if you get back on quickly. And Nim says this is the number one thing that he sees from protests as people that they weren't thinking. There was nothing malicious. They messed up and they got excited and they just wanted to get back in the race. And they did so while taking 1 or 2 or 4 people out. And the big thing we've seen with this, the rise, he believes, is that the new Ferrari 488 Challenge series, the GT3 series, that's incredibly popular, probably one of my favorite ones to race, goes off every hour. But sometimes the racecraft after an accident is not the best.
So I saw the Sonoma race, the NASCAR race this weekend, and I can't remember who it was, but they spun in the carousel. And the camera's on the car's facing the complete wrong direction, and he just had to sit there. For the driver, it must have felt like hours. It was only a matter of probably 10 seconds, but he had to let the entire field go by, which was exactly the right thing to do. If he had tried to spin that car, loop it around, he would have taken out half the field.
I think the key here is, and I feel like we forget this because we all get excited, we all get that red mist sometimes, drive others the way that you want to be driven. I think it certainly applies here. I'm sure that just about everybody listening at some point has been taken out by somebody who has made a move like this. Just don't be that guy yourself. Don't pay that one forward.
Yeah, and then don't hit the mic button if you are that person, because nothing good that comes out of your mouth is going to happen.
So I know you've been talking to Nim about these, but I just want to remind everybody that Nim is not the only steward we have. We have a team of guys that deal with these sorts of things, and Nim is kind of the name and the face of that because he's been here for so long, but he's got a group of guys that work on that. So anytime there's a protest, it doesn't necessarily go to Nim, but they're all on the same page and they have the same philosophy. Generally we think people are good and they make mistakes. Most of the incidents are not malicious, but there certainly are mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Our team is here to help. They're here to officiate fairly. Nobody's got a grudge against you. Nobody's got anything, nobody's got anything against the way that you drive. This happens in the pros all the time. I came from rallycross. This happened all the time, especially...
A little bit of contact in that series,
Yeah,
huh?
just a little bit of contact. I mean, I remember we had a driver once who wrecked from the lead and tried to back it out of a tire barrier and nearly backed it into second place and would have screwed up the whole race.
I
with
saw
about
that
2
race
laps to go.
live.
I think you did. We're not going to name names.
What does it rhyme with?
Yeah, we'll leave it.
Nice try there.
One of those things that's funny in your head, and then you said it into a live mic.
I'm sorry. I'm not a rapper. I can't rhyme that quickly.
Okay. All right, moving into our next section. This is a cool one that Kevin actually came up with in conjunction with Tony Gardner, and it's like tips and tricks. We're going to talk about a featured car. Every episode, it's going to tie in with our throw and go challenge that we'll discuss a little bit later.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoiler alert. It's the Formula 3.5. If you haven't been in this series, people are racing it right now. Get in there and make Kevin and I look bad. But I've been working with the community this week and finding out some basic setup ideas and driving ideas around each car, because each car has its own attitude, and the community for the 3.5 has not, they have delivered. They definitely did not fail. And I have a couple here. I just want to shout out some people that have some excellent comments on setup and driving tactics and whatnot, because this car is a handful. I mean, it's got there's a lot to it, especially with the added element of DRS, which Kevin didn't know about and forgot to map for our challenge. But yeah, so to shout some people out here, Stephen Jones 7, you know who you are, discovered that tire temperatures can go up by as much as 60 degrees Celsius in a single braking zone without locking them up. And now your tires are completely roasted, and for the next lap while they're cooling down, you're going to be slow. He says he shaved almost a second off his time in Spa just by backing up his braking points a little bit and keeping those tire temps down a little bit. I think you can use that in most every series, but this is a good tidbit for this car. Gregory Olson from the Land Down Under wrote me a novel that was much appreciated, and the big thing that he was pointing on was ride heights. And I spoke with Chris Lurch, who helped program this car, about this. And ride heights, as far as the ground effect arrow in this car, are incredibly important. Changing the ride heights as much as a 0.5 millimeter apparently makes a huge difference. I don't know that I have spent enough time in any car to be that finely tuned. But he also said another personal tip for him as far as strategy is DRS is unlimited in qualifying, Kevin.
Thanks for the reminder.
So what he tends to do is uses a high downforce set for qualifying, but then opens up DRS every chance he gets to try to get the best of both worlds. And he says that's helped him a lot.
That's a really solid tip right there for somebody moving into a car that's got DRS, never used it before. A lot of times people set cars up with minimal downforce in qualifying. They'll drive it as loose as they can to and just hang on for one lap. But it sounds like maybe you don't have to do that with this particular car.
Yep. But I would say that the best tip he gave on here, I have it highlighted in hot pink here. He said, with all that said, I've always found the bulk of my lap time improvements by thinking more about my driving than the setup of my car. And that's something across all series we hear. You get into especially one of the lower series. Hey, does anybody have a set? I think everybody's heard this, and they're, oh, my setup is trash. And we see it in the forums. And you know what? Driving craft is where the secret lies, in focusing on the task at hand. And
practice. Most of us, certainly all of us in this group here, are not consistent enough that a setup's going to make us that much better. It may make the car feel a little bit better, but really practice is the key to getting a good lap time.
I like that you said the word consistent and saying not good enough. That made me feel a lot better about myself. Some other really nice notes from Matteo, and I apologize for your last name here. No? All right. Matteo Capolinari, sorry in advance. He's kind of helps with this community setups for the Formula 3.5 car, and he has a nice sticky at the top in the forums. Get a chance, go in there, but I had some stuff that I highlighted. He said a lot of the problem with this car and a lot of other cars too is people are changing their setup for every single track, and that's just not realistic. It's not something that any of the Formula 1 guys, Indy guys, NASCAR guys, they have a couple of baselines that they use, and they show up at the track, they roll the car out of the hauler, and that's where they go. They're not starting from scratch every week because that's exactly what you'd be doing. You'd be starting from scratch. And he says that one of the biggest mistakes he sees from a strategy standpoint is people just going and downloading the new VRS set or heading over to Craig's or whatever and getting a set and just expecting it to be the end-all be-all. That set is not necessarily set for your driving style. So finding that baseline that's good for you and spending the time to get that set up and then making the minor tweaks. And he has some notes on that, but that was the big one. He starts off, I apologize, with tire pressure. Tire pressure, he says, is everything, especially in the 3.5. And one of the things that people underdo is they don't go out and check and make sure the car is balanced well in tire pressure. So he says go out, run 3 consistent laps, pull it into the garage without locking up the tires, and then check your tire pressures and make sure that they're all equal. And if they're not equal, make a small adjustment, but get the car balanced before you start making wild changes. He talks about the differential a little bit. If you feel like the car is too loose on corner exit, he says move the preload down a little bit. One click does a lot. If you feel like you're too loose under braking, you can move the preload up. I didn't know that. I don't know anything about differential, so now I want to go play with it and see how much out of whack I can get it. But some really cool information on the 3.5. If you have a chance, head over to the forums, check it out. There's a novel in there, and thanks for everybody that gave me information on that because I didn't know anything about that car. Moving on, we're going to talk about the Sim Racing Expo and iRacing's presence there. Kevin, you know more about this than I do.
Sure. The Sim Racing Expo is held every year in Germany for the past 5 years, I think, and we've been there most all of those years. We're planning to head back again this year. It's in the end of August, September, so in the U.S. time, it's Labor Day weekend, which is the unofficial end to summer here in the States, but not a holiday that's celebrated in the rest of the world. So a good weekend for anybody in Europe that wants to go and hang out with some sim racers. Check out iRacing. There'll be other titles there. Lots of hardware manufacturers, which is really cool. So if you're looking for a new wheel, pedal, chassis, screen, whatever it is you're looking for, gloves, shifter, anything, they're going to be there set up, and it should be a lot of fun. A few of us from the office will be there, so you can come hang out with us and do a little meet and greet, take a picture with Mr. Greg West if you want.
Oh, he's so famous. Chris is going to be at like 5 races that weekend, I'm sure, since it's holiday weekend.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll be on the other side of the Atlantic, but I don't know if from my Rallycross tenure I made too many friends in Europe anyway.
The man who killed Rallycross. Moving on to this week in iRacing, we had the World of Outlaws late model season opener at Volusia. Great racing, Chris.
Oh, phenomenal racing, Greg. And Volusia has been such an awesome track on both World of Outlaws schedules. The sprint car races earlier this year and now kicking off the late model season. What's most interesting to me is that the top 4 drivers from this season opener were all new to the series this year. Zach Leonardi, the defending champion, was the top returning driver in 5th, but Hayden Cardwell put a hurting on everybody. Qualified first, won his heat race, led every lap of the 50-lap feature, so that was pretty dominant. We had a great battle for second place, though. Blake Cannon and Evan Say, last couple of laps, they traded the position a couple of times, tried to use each other up a little bit, some slide jobs from the inside. It was some pretty exciting racing, and I can't wait to go to Lima Land.
Yeah, really cool series. Looking forward to Lima Land. Those guys have a lot of cash on the line. I believe it's $25,000 purse. So you can make a pretty decent living on that. Ask Alex Bergeron, who cleaned house in the World of Outlaws series prior. And then we got Peak at Chicagoland.
What can you say about Keegan Leahy? I mean, been very fast over the past couple of races. 2 victories. Now he's in the points lead, setting up a really great battle with Ryan Luza. But Corey Vincent and Bobby Zelensky, again, second place, one of the best battles that we've had. This past week we've had a couple of winners that have just sort of been head and shoulders above the field, but that fight for second was just incredibly compelling.
Yeah, what was really cool was seeing Corey Vincent have that race. He was below the cut line significantly, wasn't even in the top 24 graphic that Drew put together before the race, and now he finds himself above the cut line, moved up to 19th in points with that, and shows that, hey, I can run with these guys. So I'm excited to see what he can do with that momentum moving forward. But going back to Keegan and that VRS Chevy, I mean, absolutely dominant. Wins the race by 6 seconds. What was really cool was I was listening to the NASCAR Race Hub podcast. They had Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski on there, and they were talking about the Peak Series, and they threw a little jab at us that we probably deserved, saying if he won by 6 seconds, we probably need to look at the package a little bit and maybe make some adjustments. So that was pretty cool to see. Moving on to the 6 Hours of the Glen recap. Kevin, you have a wild amount of stats on your
the 6 Hours of the Glen is a special event we've done for a number of years. We skipped last year, but it's back on the calendar. A super popular team event. It's a little bit more doable. Only 6 hours versus Daytona, Sebring, Spa, Nürburgring. Yeah, so pretty good participation. There's over 1,000 teams participated, 2,400 drivers. I think there were 28 splits. This is an interesting number. 185,000 laps were driven. I shared that with IMSA, and they didn't know what to say. Obviously, we work a little different than them, and we can have more cars racing at the same time. But IMSA was pretty pleased that we had the success we did. Obviously, the real world race is this weekend at the Glen, which is always a fun race if you're going to upstate New York. Check it out. It's a beautiful part of the country, Finger Lakes region. This is the time of year to be there. I don't know why I'm plugging IMSA, but it is a fun race. I've been there multiple times, so if you ever get a chance, check it out.
Should be a good race. I really love that layout of Watkins Glen. That off-camber corner coming out of the boot, that left-hander, is a great place to really screw up your race, especially if you touch that inside curb.
One of my favorite tracks. I've driven it in the real world in my track car. Actually, lost my clutch there going into turn one, so that was an interesting lap to try to limp it home without my clutch. So
you gotta slow down a little bit before you drive it down in the second gear there.
Maybe the problem.
At least you didn't Jimmy Johnson it, right?
That's true. That's true.
And then we got Ignite at South Boston, Chris.
Yeah, 163 drivers in Ignite in South Boston second week. 14 of them took wins. Andy Trupiano coming back. He was a playoff finalist last year. He's the new points leader. It's awesome to see all the young drivers that have signed up. The Ignite series, obviously, for teen drivers. It's a great development initiative by NASCAR, and the champion's going to take $10,000 home as a sim racing or real racing scholarship. So, some real money on the line for some of these kids to help them get a leg up in their careers.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to hurt getting things started, whether it's going to driving school or an investment in equipment or whatnot. It's a cool program that we have with NASCAR. Really excited to see that continue to grow. Moving into our real-world recap presented by the guys over at SimLab. If you have an opportunity, head over to the SimLab Production Car Challenge. You have the opportunity to win one of their P1X sim racing chassis, valued at around $700. Richard and the guys have put up one of those for a random race participant for Season 3 and one for Season 4 as well. So the more you race, the more opportunity you have. I have one of their triple monitor mounts. It's a rock solid. Kevin, you said they've helped us at some trade shows, and they put together some of the best equipment.
Yeah, we hope to be working with them again at the Sim Racing Expo this year.
Looking forward to it. Let's talk NASCAR at Sonoma. Boogity, boogity, boogity. One last time. DW, Darrell Waltrip calling his last race. And Kevin, you had some interesting thoughts on that and how on your thoughts on his call-out.
Well, his call-out is obviously his signature. I think he's done a great job over the last, 19 years or so. Obviously a legend in the car as well. I have to say I wasn't all that excited about his call when he started it, but it grew on me, and he'll be missed in the booth. He provides an interesting perspective, and he's got quite the personality. So I'll certainly miss him listening to him on the booth.
No doubt. And DW basically transformed the way that NASCAR broadcasting was from the very beginning. Of course, the first race that he called, the 2001 Daytona 500, was notable for some very different and obviously very sad reasons, but the way that he conducted himself in the booth for 19 years, the way that he sort of fashioned himself as a voice of the people, as a voice of the common NASCAR fan, obviously a 3-time NASCAR Cup champion, but still the voice of the common fan, was an important part of those broadcasts and something that, I'm sure that a lot of fans are, of course, going to miss. There's plenty of talent in the booth. Mike Joy has been a legend in calling races for years. I loved Jeff Gordon's addition a few years ago. I think Jeff does a great job, and I know that they're going to take up the torch, and whoever joins them in the booth, I'm sure will be another fantastic addition, but it'll certainly be different not to have DW on the mic for the first half of the season from now on.
Absolutely. Actually, moving on to the race, Martin Truex comes through and gets the victory. Kyle Busch in second. They're using the carousel layout for the first time since I think it was 1997. We saw some interesting passing opportunities. I think pretty much everybody had a dent in their front bumper. I saw the video of Kyle Busch throwing the ice bag out the window. That was pretty good. But some good racing. NASCAR guys proving that they are becoming more and more proficient on these road courses as they become more prevalent. The fans want to see it. We've got the Charlotte Roval coming up later this year. So you can't just be a mile-and-a-half expert anymore because the way the NASCAR schedule is working out, you've got to be proficient with short tracks, super speedways, mile-and-a-halves, and turning right at road courses. So cool to see how that's going to play out, especially once we get onto the chase. Moving into IndyCar at Road America, I got my wish. Alexander Rossi gets the W. Called it.
He called it last week.
He's had momentum since Indy. For those of you new to the podcast, I've been kind of a fanboy of Rossi since he showed his displeasure in a very animated fashion of a lap car kind of holding him up with a fist in the air at 230 miles an hour going into turn one. My hero. But Road America does not fail to deliver another great race. Turn 5, the downhill going into that tight left corner, had a notable number of people go off there. Simon Pagenaud, he's pretty good, won the Indy 500. Herta went off there twice. Scott Dixon, Marcus Ericsson, a lot of people coming in a little bit hot. Anybody that's run that track in real life or in the sim, it's deceptive, Kevin.
It's a really hard corner. You think it's just get on the brakes and turn, but whatever car you're in, you are maxed out on speed, and your braking point is not where you think it's going to be. I've gone off multiple times in the sim there, for sure. But Dixon had the drive of the race, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, after going off early in the race and then bringing it back, there's a reason he's a series champion.
That guy can drive.
He can drive a little bit. He's got some skills behind the wheel. But there was some really cool racing. The Herta and Hinchcliffe on the last lap. Rossi checked out, said bye. But Herta and Hinchcliffe on the last lap, Herta went off track again. I think that was the third time he did that. But battling for second and third place. Just some good racing, though. Chris, you got a big smile on your face.
I think you're a little jealous of Colton Herta's job, Greg, because you seem to pick on him a lot.
Well, if you drive like that, I can appreciate aggressive driving. I don't like it when you start, affecting other people's races, whether it's in real life or whether it's in iRacing. Trying to keep it clean. He's 19 years old. Like you said last week, not even old enough to drink yet. He's in command of a rocket ship. He needs maybe a little. Tone it down just a little bit, and a little bit of patience, and he'll learn with time.
It makes it exciting, though. Makes it fun to watch.
It is definitely fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Moving into Ty Majeski and the Dick Trickle 99. I've been looking forward to saying that all day, Chris.
Yeah, Greg, which, by the way, is not an ARCA race, as you so incorrectly identified it on Twitter. Come on, if you're going to call me out for being an ARCA fanboy, then I'm going to call you out when you get the series wrong.
Touche.
Nice super late model race up there in Wisconsin. Awesome to see Ty Majeski take another checkered flag. I mean, he's been having a great season so far. A couple of ARCA victories, now moving back to the super late model, getting a win. And second place, we talked about him a bit last week, won Johnny Sauter, who had a little forced break from the Truck Series at Gateway, and I think that segues pretty well into us discussing that Truck Series race because we had a pretty fun story coming out of that.
Yeah, last week Ross Chastain disqualified. We talked about it on the podcast. It really hurt his chances of getting into the playoffs. What does he do? Come back, I'll win again. I don't care.
You guys remember that poster of Johnny Cash where he's just flipping a very angry middle finger? That's how I envision Ross Chastain right now. Oh, you're going to take my win from me? All right, I'll just get another. It's cool.
Plenty more races for me to win, right? That's a great attitude as a racer. Move on, right? Put it behind you. Mistakes, whatever. It happens, but you got to move forward. You can't dwell on it. So good for him for being able to just focus and, get it done.
If he keeps the momentum going forward, he checked the box for getting the race win to get in the playoffs. He's got to move into the top 20. Looks like he's going to easily do that. So excited to see how that season plays out. There's definitely been some high drama. It's got my attention. I haven't really followed trucks in the last couple of years, and now I find myself checking in and seeing how it's going.
Calling him for the championship this year. Calling it right now. It's June.
Big shot. All right, moving into the week ahead, We have the Throw and Go Challenge, the time attack series that Kevin and I started. What started off as just an intra-office lunch bet has turned into a full-blown series on iRacing. For those of you that are not familiar with the Throw and Go Challenge, it's pretty simple. We have a dartboard in the office that has every car in the service on it. On Friday mornings, Kevin comes in, throws a dart, and we immediately take whatever car it lands on and go to the Tourist Spartan version of the Nordschleife, and you get one lap, no out lap, no practice.
Baseline setup.
Baseline setup afternoon. If you want to know the specs, just go look at the Time Attack series. And every time you get an ink, it's a 10-second penalty. Every time, but if you bin the car, you have to bring it home. And so we find ourselves driving a little more carefully, wouldn't you say,
Is it
Kevin?
10-second or 30-second penalty? I can't remember.
I think it's 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, but I guess I'm pleased to announce that there was an upset this week. Not really pleased, but it happened. Greg pulled out the win. I think I had him on raw pace, but too many incident points for me, so that hurt. But I'll tell you that I don't have a lot of experience driving that car. I did forget a couple of settings on the car, and
you forgot to map DRS to your wheel.
And I would say that I got caught out in the carousel. I just got flung out of the carousel in that car. I don't think I've driven many ground effects cars like that, with a big wing through there. So I was surprised, and I think Greg was smiling when he heard me screaming in the pod next to him.
It's pretty funny because I'm racing in VR and Kevin's racing on a single screen. So he started probably 20 seconds before me, but then he had this tendency to verbalize what was happening in his lap. So I was using it as strategy. So when he said he got thrown out of the carousel, I just decided not to take the carousel, and that seemed to help. It was a really close race on raw pace. Kevin was at 6 minutes, 13 seconds. I was 6 minutes, 17 seconds, but he had 1X, which cost him 10 seconds. I did it clean.
Congratulations.
Victory is mine.
Victory is yours.
But,
so it's 2-1 in the overall standings, I think.
But if you go look at the Time Attack series, we're getting our butts kicked.
That's a given. But hey, it's still a fun project. It's cool to do. We talked about it in the last couple of podcasts. The pressure that you feel, at least I feel, when I sit down. We throw the dart, we sit down, load the track. So, that's the only time you have to think about it while the Nürburgring's loading. You hope you have a slow computer so you can think about it a little longer. But that's it, and then you go. And, you go into the first high-speed corner, and you're like, I don't know how this car is going to stick. I don't know where I need to brake in this car. So you spend the first half of the lap trying to figure out the car on that track.
Well, it was really cool, too, because a couple other people from the office came in that afternoon and gave it a shot. And Drew Adamson is quick. And he, after doing the 24 hours in Nürburgring, knows the track very well. And he just takes off like a bat out of hell. And next thing you know, he makes a small mistake and ends up flipping off the course and going out of bounds. But he
was talking trash when he saw our times. He was thinking, well, he got a DNF, so we beat him.
So Doug Hunt, who is not quick, admittedly not quick, decides to jump in. He's like, I'm just going to putt around in fourth gear and set a time so I can beat Drew. And crashes 3 corners out and gets he flipped the car over and could not get it righted. And so Doug, unfortunately,
also a DNF.
DNFs, but he didn't get bragging rights over Drew. He was really looking forward to that. Next up, we've got the Porsche Esports Supercup at the Glen, just like IMSA. This race has really tightened up between Josh and Mitchell DeJong. Mitchell's our featured driver this week with the in-car camera. But it looked like this series was almost over with Josh pulling away, Josh Rogers, and now we find ourselves with a really tight race, Chris.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the second half of the season plays out. Going into round 5 at Canadian Tire, Josh Rogers had a 123-point lead over Mitchell DeJong, but wasn't allowed to qualify because his incident points from the previous races had added up, and that's what your penalty is. You're not allowed to qualify, so you've got to start the sprint race at the back. Managed to climb his way through the field quite a bit in the sprint race, but got caught up in some other people's trouble in the feature, took a DNF. Now the gap is down to 28 points, which is just an illustration of how quickly things can change in this series. That's a 95-point swing. Max Benecke closed it up as well, taking his first victory of the year. So, it's going to be interesting to see if Josh kind of runs the same strategy where it's just set blistering times and hope that you build up enough of a lead that if something like this happens again and you have penalty points and you're not allowed to qualify again, or heaven forbid, held out of a race, anything like that, it's a different strategy for everybody involved. Some people have been trying to just be steady. Drivers like Josh has just been spanking the field with lap times.
Yeah, no, it's great to see that it's tightened up. I think that that shows that the format is working pretty well. It makes it exciting. But there's a lot of money on the line. It's a $100,000 prize pool, which is, there's a lot of pressure on these guys to win their share of that. So
yeah, money talks.
Yeah,
sure does.
I'm sure Josh was sweating it. Starting at the back, he did really well in that sprint race, and then paid the price in the feature. But I'm excited that it's tight, and we have no idea who's going to win because that really will make for some good racing.
We've also got the World of Outlaws late model round 2. Looking forward to another exciting race, Chris.
Yeah, another exciting race, this time at Lima Land. 4 drivers, the top 4 from last year's race, Alex Bergeron, Nick Cooper, Zach Leonardi, Howard Weaver, all coming back. They all had very up and down days at Volusia to start the season. Bergeron and Weaver both had to win their LCQs just to get into the feature. So, it's going to be interesting to see if it was kind of a fluke for some of those new drivers who came in and took the top 4 spots in the first race of the season, or if they're really just going to throw the gauntlet and they're going to be the guys who dominate.
Yeah, I was curious whether Bergeron was going to come in and have the same dominance that he showed in the previous World of Outlaws series, but this late model is a beast to drive. It is incredibly difficult. I have no handle on this thing at all. I've tried to hot lap it. I cannot figure it out. I talked to Tyler Hudson, and he tried to give me some tips on it, and I just ended up in the wall harder, so that didn't work. But to see how tight these guys can race and the level of racecraft that they have, I'm just utterly impressed. It was an awesome broadcast, and I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm definitely going to be tuning in.
I was watching it, Monday night, and I swear every corner that I watched, I'm thinking that guy's going to hit him. They're going to hit. They're going to wreck. And sure enough, they'd slide in there side by side, hold it. The guys in that series are top notch. They are some skilled racers.
Yeah, only one caution that entire 50-lap feature. Keep in mind that's a big difference from the sprint cars. Sprint cars only ran a 30-lap main. These guys run in 50. Many more opportunities to make mistakes. Many more opportunities to get into somebody, to get it loose, get it turned around. Only one driver ends up suffering from that, and I believe it was Austin Carr, and I think he came all the way back to 12th, even though he was at the back of the pack. So, plenty of time if you do make that mistake to come back up through the field, and Austin was one of our top drivers last year, and it'll be interesting to see how he rebounds at Lima Land.
We also have Ignite Week 3, Chris.
Yep, Southern National Motorsports Park, just like South Boston, another 0.4 mile track. Going to be interesting to see how this one plays out, just because it wasn't a track that was on the Ignite schedule last year. So anybody who's coming back from last year doesn't have that racing point of reference from the inaugural Ignite season in 2018. That said, again, South Boston was the exact same track length. So, I would imagine that some of the guys who were good last week are going to be good this week too.
Well, that's all we've got for today. We won't be around next week. We're going to be off for the holiday, hoping everybody's going to have a safe and hopefully motorsports-filled 4th of July. I know I've got big plans. I'm going to the New England Nationals, NHRA, going to see some top-field dragsters and funny cars just rip my eardrums out. I could not be more excited. Kevin, you've got some pretty cool plans as well.
Yeah, I'm headed up to Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, I should say, with the IMSA series and the number 54 MLT Motorsports prototype challenge car that I work on. So we're excited to get back on track. I may have mentioned that we won the last race we were in at Mid Ohio. I don't know if that came up. But,
setting the bar pretty high.
Yeah, so
expectations are through the roof.
Expectations are high. We've got Dakota Dickerson and Dylan Murray driving for us. It's a 3-hour race, so it's a bit longer than our normal race, which is about an hour and 45, hour and 50 minutes. So that'll change up strategy a little bit. It means I'm going to have to fuel the car twice. We can't carry enough fuel, so
Big
extra pressure on me. That's twice as many pit stops. So I'm excited. I've never been to that track other than online, but really excited to get up there. The airport, strangely enough, has always been on my bucket list, which is odd, I know. But the call sign, the call letters, YYZ, anybody know that reference?
No, you're aging yourself.
I'm aging myself.
I'm not a big Rush guy.
I'm a huge Rush fan, so
I gotta watch Ready Player One now.
There you go.
And then Chris.
Yep, I am closing out a busy stretch for me of 3 races in 4 weekends. Went to American Flat Track as they opened up the Laconia Short Track back at New Hampshire Motor Speedway on Father's Day weekend. I had this past weekend off. I will be down at Southwick for Lucas Oil Pro Motocross, my second year of doing that. Southwick's an awesome track. I mean, I've become a motocross guy over the past couple of years. I never cared about two-wheel racing until very recently, but they've had some awesome championship battles. And then, Greg, I guess I'll see you at New England Dragway for the Nationals. Also my second year in a row of doing that. Last year I was kind of embedded with Steve Torrance and the Torrance Racing team, doing a profile on Steve, who has had just an incredible story. Overcame, I believe it was Hodgkin's lymphoma when he was younger, had a heart attack a few years ago, worked so hard to get back into the seat and swept the countdown, swept the playoffs last year. Perfect 6 for 6, won every round he was in. He, Lewis Hamilton, Kyle Busch, Scott Dixon, all nominated for SB Best Driver, and I don't think any of us should be stumping for any particular driver on this podcast, but given those stats, I know who I think should win it statistically. Perfect playoffs, come on.
That's pretty good. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. We're also on Spotify. You'll see us on YouTube as well. Leave us a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Thumbs up, please.
Thumbs up, please. But most places that podcasts are found, and if it's not there, let us know, and we'll try to get it there. Make sure you jump into Formula Fun starting next week. Should be a good time. And the Throw and Go Challenge, show Kevin and I who's boss. Until next time, we'll see you on the track.